Well, hey, everybody, welcome to the Seeing Ability podcast, where we're having a conversation about the world of people living with disabilities. And that means we're going to be talking, in some cases, to parents who are or have raised children with disabilities. We're going to be talking to young adults or teenagers or full adults who are the person who grew up as the kid with the disability. And we're going to be talking to a lot of people that support that community. So that might be folks in education, that might be folks in healthcare, folks in nonprofit. Now, the podcast is named Seeing Ability, and the origin of that is a lot of times when the society looks at a person who is different, what they see is the disability. And my goal is, if you think of that word and you take off the first three letters of disability, you're left with ability, and thus the title, Seeing Ability. And I'm super excited that we can get a chance to know and see a little bit of the ability in our guest today. I've got with me Mychaela Josiah. Mychaela, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Great to have you here. Now, my listeners know we like to start off, even though we're talking about the world of disability, we're all just people. So we got to get to know you a little bit and start off with the Fast Four, brought to us by my friends at Reliable Tech Help. So for all your tech needs, reach out to them at 502-797-7399. Let's start off with the Fast Four with, what is your favorite food?
Spaghetti.
Spaghetti. There we go. All right. Now, what kind of music do you enjoy listening to?
I like Taylor Swift.
A Swiftie. Okay, very good. If we found you having some downtime and free time, what's an activity you like to do?
I like reading.
Fantastic. And if you got to go on a fantasy trip anywhere, where would it be?
Disney World with my
Disney
family.
World. Okay, Disney World, most definitely. Okay, very good. So let's start off a little bit for folks just to get to know you. Talk a little bit about your diagnosis, your disability, kind of what it is, since people are meeting you for the first time, and then maybe a little bit about how that tends to impact your life as a young adult.
My disability is cerebral palsy. It mainly affects my legs. I use a wheelchair and a walker to get around. That that um that helps me get around.
When do you tend to use the walker more, or when do you tend to use the wheelchair, and what's the difference?
I tend to use my wheelchair when I am um out when I'm out with my family, like if we're going like to different places that I don't really use my walker for, and
Probably.
I use my walker when I'm in the house because it's easier and convenient.
Right. And probably I would imagine if you're going someplace out in the community where longer distances, maybe for stamina, or the chair might help a little bit more. You could use a walker, but if you were going someplace like, say, an amusement park, might tire you out by the end of the day. Is that pretty accurate?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep.
So what do you think are some of the misperceptions that people have about individuals who are, say, wheelchair users? They see somebody roll into a room. What's a common misperception?
And I think is when they there and like they come up and ask questions. Like we're not like people us people being in wheelchairs are not gonna bite.
Not going to bite. Yeah.
We're just people who have a disability. We're still people. We just have a limitation that
Right.
limits us.
And in your case, maybe, I mean, everybody has limitations. They just don't wear it on their shirt saying what they are. But when you roll into a room, you're saying sometimes it makes people maybe less, people aren't as comfortable approaching you because somehow they don't see you as a person. They see you as a person in a wheelchair. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
Yeah. And so you would love for people to just talk to you like you're a person, not like you're a disability.
yeah.
Okay. I think that's a good one. Speaking of talking to other people, now I have to make a disclaimer here. You and I met many years ago. You keep getting older. I don't. I'm going to put that out there. That's my story. I'm sticking to it.
Yes.
As a now woman of legal age, I believe you told me you're 21. Um,
Yes.
tell us about like what you're up to these days in terms of in school, not in school, what you're looking at doing maybe for work. What are some of your interests in that arena, school work area?
I I was attending school, but now I'm not. Um, as far as like working, I want
Mhm.
to um I want to work in childcare.
Work with kids.
Yes.
What draws you to working with kids?
I have younger siblings, and having to watch them and help them sometimes has drawn me to want to work with kids.
Well, that's impressive. I think there's some people that would say the opposite. I spend so much time with my siblings. It's the last thing I want to do. So that means you must really love your siblings and you're good with them.
Yes.
That's awesome. Now, I think you might have told me, are you think when we before we got on air, you were telling me you might have some aspirations to get behind the wheel. Is that true?
Yes, I want to start driving. That is one of my goals before 2024 ends.
Oh, fantastic. So you're looking at some programs where you might be able to learn driving.
Mhm.
Fantastic. Um, Let me ask you this. You and I met long ago when you were doing an activity at a place where I used to work, the Kids Center in Louisville, and you were
Yep.
involved in adaptive sports, I guess, back then. Tell us a little bit about your background in terms of regular sports, adaptive sports, for those who haven't met you. What did you do, and what did you like about those? How did it help you?
The adaptive sports I did the sports I did was cheerleading.
Hmm.
I I one was cheering for the kids center.
Hmm.
The other one I did for my brother's little league football program. Both of them I really liked because it kind of gave me the confidence. It kind of gave me the confidence to know that yes, I do have a disability, but that's always not gonna stop you
Hmm.
from 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 what you want to do.
I like that. And I bet you that smile of yours came in handy in cheerleading.
Yes. The voice not so much, but the smile, yes.
The voice, not so much. So self-confidence was a big thing. What about connecting? I think you made some pretty strong bonds in terms of like having a social community tied to being involved in those activities. Tell us a little bit about that. Some of the friends you made. Are they still friends in your life years later?
Yes, I have made a whole lot of friends that I still talk to today.
Yeah. And how was that helpful? What about it's helpful for you as the participant. What about for your parents? Were they able to have connections to other parents that were in cheer, that build a little part of their village, their community? What was that like?
Yeah, I think my parents, my especially my mom, she really didn't enjoy it because like she just wasn't the only parent. When I was doing cheerleading for the kids center, she wasn't the only parent who had a disability.
Right.
She
So,
had other parents that also had children with disabilities.
right. And that having people that are kind of in the same boat, that helps.
Hmm.
Now, you said you were also involved in I think through your siblings, you're also involved in some non-adaptive cheer squads. Tell us about that.
Um, that that one was that one was really cool because it kind of gave the team a different look as to someone who has a disability,
Mhm.
and it made the team have a stronger connection.
Okay. How do you think it had an impact on the other people on the team who maybe prior to that hadn't had a teammate with different types of abilities? How do you think it changed them?
I think it changed. I think it changed them. Um, I think it changed them a lot because it gave them something to look forward to,
Hmm.
and they just didn't see me for my disability. They just saw me as a person.
Right, just as a teammate. That was probably very interesting. Well, hey, I want to ask you a couple more questions, but we're going to take a very quick break and we'll be right back. When you have a kid who is different, all your ducks need to be in a row, especially your money. Cam Howell with Primerica knows the joys and the challenges as he and his wife raise their medically fragile son, Brooks. Cam brings over 13 years of experience to help clients be protected, have a plan for the future, reduce debt, and connect to resources. Get your financial house in order so that you can enjoy every moment with your child. Reach out today at 502 803 5075. And now back to the show. All right, Mychaela, I wanted to ask you a little bit about being a little older now. You've kind of traveled this path. What advice would you have for younger people? Maybe we've got somebody listening and they have a 6 or 7 year old who uses a chair. What advice would you have to them as they're growing up?
The advice I would have for them is to not to don't limit your child can't into what they can't do. Always always let them do some things, but if they need help, then you can come behind them and like show them how to do it, and then maybe they can like pick it up.
Okay, so you're saying no helicopter parents allowed who swoop in every time you have a difficulty, they step in and do things for you.
Yeah.
Now we don't want to tell on anybody, but was that ever a challenge in your household?
Yes.
It might have been. Okay, so you're saying we won't say who, but either your mom or your dad, they might have had a tendency to step in and do stuff for you.
Yeah.
So what do you think what do you think that does when they don't do that, when they let you struggle and let you kind of figuratively fall down and learn how to get back up or make mistakes, learn through failure? How does that help the young person with the disability if parents are allowed, as hard as it is, to sit on their hands and not jump in? How does it help you?
It helps a lot because it shows the parent that it shows the parent that you can that the child can do that you can do it. And as for me, it showed my parents that I was able to do things on my own
And when
without their help and without my siblings' help.
Right. And that experience of, and probably when you say you could do things on your own, I'm sure it wasn't without struggle, right? It wasn't without trial and error and failure. But I bet you by the time you went through that trial and error and eventually mastered the task, you were probably pretty darn proud of yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what did that feel like?
It felt really good because I knew I was capable of doing it.
Right. So as hard as it is to watch you trial and error, watch you fail over and over again, the growth is from the failure and the learning how to keep going even if you are not succeeding. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yes.
I love that. Now you mentioned a lot of siblings, and so one of the things when I'm interviewing adults who grew up with a disability, they talk a lot about like what it was like in their house in terms of expectations and chores and stuff like that. Like, did they did their disability give them a get out of work card, or did they have to do stuff just like everybody else? Tell us a little bit about what was that like in your house, and how did that help you?
Okay. Having to get out of chores wasn't like it 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 wasn't a thing for my parents because like they if like my siblings had to do chores, then I also had to do them too. But I would have to adapt the chores that I was doing compared to like my siblings
Yeah.
because most would be hard for me to do.
Yeah. So you still had to do them. You just might have had to do them a different way.
Yeah.
But they didn't cut you any slack. You still had to pull your
Nope.
weight.
I still had to put in my weight in.
I like that. I like that. Um, what about the topic that some of the work when you're growing up as a person with a disability, especially a physical one, is the dreaded two words, physical therapy or therapy in general. And I think you might have told me that you have a bit of a, well, I'll let you describe it, your relationship with physical therapy. Tell us a little bit about that and tell us what is your, now that you have the benefit of being older and surely much wiser, what are you looking back? How did it help you? What advice would you give for both parents and kids? First, just tell us about you and therapy.
I had a love-hate relationship with physical therapy.
Okay.
I didn't I didn't want to do it.
Yep.
I always wanted to get out of it
Okay.
because I didn't really when I was younger, I didn't really necessarily see the need for physical therapy,
Sure.
and I've always just I dreaded going every Monday.
And was that because physically it was challenging and like that was you wanted to avoid the pain and the pushing yourself from it?
Yes, and I hated stretching.
Hated stretching. So that's the
The
hate
stretching
part.
was the
And
worst.
that's the hate part and the dread part. What eventually became your understanding of the love part?
Um, the love part is when I knew I wanted, like, I have always wanted to walk on my own. So, like,
Mhm.
after after having the hate part of physical therapy, the love part is I knew it was good for me because I wanted to be able to walk on my own and
Yeah,
not have to use my chair anymore
yeah,
or my walker.
yeah.
And
So, so
that is still something I want to do today is not have to use my chair or my walker.
so that's something you're still working on.
Hmm.
Yeah. So what? So looking back, what's your advice for kids that are maybe like you don't exactly jump out of their selves to go to therapy every week? And what about parents? What's your advice on that?
For kids, I would say I would say go because it gives you benefits later on in life.
Hmm.
For parents, um, I would I would say like push your kids into wanting to do better for themselves.
Mm, yeah, I like that. All right, I'm going to ask you a couple more things, but we're going to take one more quick little break. When you have a child diagnosed with a disability, the whole world tends to come to a halt. Most parents don't know what to do or where to turn. That was most certainly the case for my wife and I when our daughter Sophia came into the world at 26 weeks, weighing just a pound and a half. My new book, Seeing Ability, was written as the book I wish I had been given all those years ago. The book combines our story with interviews with over 100 people traveling this path. It's a book those on the path will understand. It's also a book those new to this path will appreciate. Pick up a copy for yourself or the next person on that path at Amazon.com. And now back to the show. All right, Mychaela, tell us a little bit about something that you want people to know about what it's like being a person who's a chair user, person with a disability. What do you think people need to know?
I think people need to know that when you see someone in a chair, don't like just stare. I would ask questions and maybe get to know the person who has the disability.
Mm,
And you can always like do like research of what disability, because maybe like you want to learn more about it.
absolutely. So yeah, how does that how has that changed for you over the years, or what was it like your first memory of like people asking questions? Did it bother you? Did you see it as a great opportunity? Did you wish they asked more instead of just giving you, like you said, stares or looks? Tell us a little bit about what that's like for the person receiving the funny looks or the strange questions.
I, I feel like I feel like people could have asked me more questions about my disability,
Hmm.
because then it would be able to educate them and for them to know what cerebral palsy is like,
Yeah,
because there's like different types and all of them are not the same.
absolutely. So I think maybe what you're saying is like in general, people should see somebody in a chair and not think, oh, I don't want to talk to them. I don't want to be rude. I don't want to ask questions. They should just relate to them as a person. And that conversation may in part deal with their disability, but it might just be about the movie everybody's there to see or the game they're watching, or, just like you would talk to any person who was standing up and not in a wheelchair. It doesn't have to be all about the disability, but it also isn't necessarily rude to ask. You'd almost rather have people ask questions than just give funny looks. Is that what you're saying?
Hmm.
Yeah, I like that. Okay, let me ask you this. We're bringing you in as a guest speaker. We've got a, let's say, place like the Kid Center where we used to know each other, where we first met, or maybe it's a hospital and they're bringing in a group of parents who have kids with a variety of disabilities. And you get a chance to give them advice. And you're going to tell them what are, let's just, you can give, it doesn't have to be a certain number, but like two or three, let's call them keys to success, pieces of advice. Like, what would you tell parents? Their kids are maybe 6 years or younger, and they've got lots of years before they become a wonderful young adult, 21-year-old like yourself. But now's your chance to give them advice because you've traveled this path. What would your advice be for parents? Give us like three big keys to success.
Well, my first advice would be to, one, don't limit your child.
Hmm.
My second one is, you can you can push you can push them to want to achieve their goals.
Hmm. I like that.
My
Okay, what about number
third
two? Go ahead.
my third would be, um I'm not sure what the third one would be. Oh, I know what the third one would be. Like, in physical therapy, like if they have like certain goals they would want to achieve, I think parents should like have a plan at home,
Hmm.
so that way,
Well,
like, if they're not at physical therapy, they can always do that at physical therapy and at home, so that way the child can get both from physical therapy and doing it at home.
I love that. So kind of incorporating some of those things where you're pushing yourself to acquire new skills, build that into your daily routine around the house as you're in
Mhm.
and at home. I
Yep.
love that. I love that. Okay, so when we set up this podcast, you intentionally said, let's not bring mom and dad on here. I want to talk just as myself. And I love that. But we do have to give them a little credit for the job they did along the way. So if you had to say,
Yeah.
if you had to say, what are a couple of things that your parents did particularly well that helped you turn into the young person you are today, especially related to like, unlike your other siblings, you had extra challenges. You're in a wheelchair, your legs don't work the same. What do you think your parents did that helped contribute to your success?
Um, I think the help that my parents did was by giving interventions, like helping in a
And what do you think they did there anything they instilled in you in terms of your attitude and kind of how you see the world? Or you talked earlier about limits and possibilities. What was kind of their philosophy related to that?
um my parents never really like limited things that I wanted to do.
Mm. So they never really, you're saying they never really set limits on what was possible for you.
They just let me go at it.
I love
Goals.
That's fantastic. Yeah, and it doesn't sound like you're done achieving them.
Nope.
Just getting started. All right. Well, we're gonna try to see if we can have you back on the podcast later. We'll catch up. We'll be like, where is she now? Down the road. I feel like we could talk for a long time, but I do try to keep these episodes a little bit short. So, any final comments to add before I do a wrap here?
One, I would say the book.
What's that? Say that again.
I would say book. I would want parents to get the book
Oh, look at you, the book. But you mean my book, the
because,
one that we just wrote. Thanks.
yep, I have a piece in that part.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, I'm gonna say the check is in the mail for that promo. That was really good self promo there. Well, for my listeners, again, we know that you have a lot of choices when it comes to listening to podcasts. So thank you for listening today. I'm sure you enjoyed hearing from Mychaela. I know I did. And if you happen to watch this episode, you get to see that great smile as well. But I bet you could hear her smile in today's episode. We don't want this to be a best kept secret. So if you like today's episode, do me a favor, go to the Facebook page for the Seeing Ability podcast and like the post of this episode. Leave a comment. We'd love it if you'd follow the Facebook page. We'd like to get other parents following it. There's kind of three goals with this podcast. The first is we hope every time there's an episode, you learn something and you get one idea that kind of is tangible that you can build into your toolkit, raising a kid with a disability or even being an adult with a disability. The second thing is we all need a little burst of motivation. And so we hope when you listen, it gets you inspired. And last but not least, it's all about the village, right? And we want this audience and these conversations we have with our guests to feel like it's part of your family, part of your community, part of your village. We want to, sometimes it's isolating out there to be a person with a disability or a parent struggling to raise with the challenges of raising a kid with disability. So we want you to listen into this podcast because we're your people and this is part of your community. So thanks again for listening. Please share this with other people and we'll see you next time. Thanks, Mychaela, for being here.
Thanks for having me.
All right, everybody. See you next time.